All right, let's go ahead and call the meeting of the Lebanon Planning Commission to order. I ask you to stand for a flag salute, please. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I've had that memorized since I was 3 years old.
Who's calling the roll tonight? Kelly, are you calling the roll?
I can. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, Commissioners Miller,
Here.
Malloy,
Here.
Angelford,
Here.
Fountain. No. Baxter,
Absent. Absent.
Brashears,
Here.
and for the last time, McLean,
Here, here, here.
Vice Chair Gary Kunerowski,
Here.
and Chair Robertson.
Here. All right. Always get this backwards. We used to have citizens' comments. We'll do that later. So we have minutes that I hope you've had an opportunity to review from September 19th. Is there any additions, corrections? Hearing none, then the minutes will stand approved as presented. We have 4 public hearings tonight, and I'm going to turn it over to legal for some cool stuff.
Yeah, very cool. Tonight's hearing will be pursuant to the quasi-judicial hearing procedure set out in Oregon law at ORS 197.797. At the start of each hearing, commission members will be asked to disclose any ex parte communications, conflict of interest, or bias. The applicable substantive criteria for this hearing will be addressed in the staff report. Testimony may be in oral or written form, but must be directed towards the criteria outlined in the staff report, the comprehensive plan, or the city's land use regulations. Any issues must be accompanied by statements and evidence sufficient enough to allow the commission and parties an opportunity to respond. Please note the failure to raise an issue, including constitutional issues, by the close of the hearing will prevent an appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals. With that, you may ask for conflict of interest or bias.
Okay. With that, I will open public hearing. Minor land petition -24-05, along with conditional use permit -24-01. Ask the Planning Commission if they have any ex parte contact, conflict of interest, or bias. Seeing none, then we'll turn it over to staff for staff report.
Good evening, everyone. Before you tonight is a proposed minor land partition and conditional use permit for the property at 1681 Franklin Street. Property is in the low density residential zone and is surrounded by other properties in the low density residential zone with a mix of single family residential, and there's an existing duplex just across the street to the west. There are public facilities in Franklin Street, including sewer, water, and storm drainage as well, that the property would be able to connect to for the proposed development. The proposal includes 2 steps. The land partition, which would include taking 2 parcels, moving around some property lines, and then dividing them to create a total of 3 parcels. And then a proposed 0 lot line development that would do an attached duplex development, basically. When it's actually said and done, what it'll ultimately look like is basically a row house of 4 units towards the back of the property. In terms of the layout, there is an existing single family home along the first parcel on Franklin Street that is proposed to remain in place, and the lot lines are designed around that existing single family home to maintain it as a conforming property, which is why the 2 flags are proposed as 0 lot line rather than applying for variances currently. And so what is proposed are 2 flag is a flag lot which would then end in a third parcel that has no street frontage. The shared access for the parcels would be via a 30-foot access easement. And a 30-foot access easement allows for up to 6 dwelling units off of it. So you have the 4 dwelling units at the back proposed off of parcels 2 and 3, plus the existing single family home off of parcel 1. And then this would also be a shared access easement for the property to the south as well. So it's a total of 6 units that would have that access easement. In terms of setbacks, the property as proposed with the development meets all the setback criteria. The setbacks for flag lots can be taken either parallel to Franklin Street or parallel to the flag or to the access easement. And so the front setback is parallel to the access easement. And a front setback requires 10 feet setback. As you can see, there's more than that provided. There's at least 32 or 44 feet provided. It requires a 20-foot rear setback. At least 24 feet is provided. And then with 0 lot lines, there's really only 1 setback provided. And in the low density residential zone, it has a standard of 1 setback has to have a 5-foot setback and then a grand total of 15 going combined with 2. So when you have a 0 lot line, you only have 1 setback. So therefore you provide a 5-foot setback. And that is what is being proposed as part of the duplexes, as you can see there. So the property meets the setback. The proposal would be a maximum 2-story structure, which complies with the height standards for the zone. The property meets the access requirements for the development requirements. As you can see with the line drawings, you have a 1-car garage provided for each of the units. And so that meets the standards for the parking requirements for the code. But then there's also excess area here that would be available for additional parking if the tenants so wished as well. Parking would be enhanced as well and redone for this front unit to be able to provide a 2 parking space pad to meet code for the front parcel as well. So we've talked about the easements, we've talked about the access, the property meets the setback requirements for the 0 lot line. There is also the shared access and maintenance easements provided over the 10-foot on either side of the property line for the 0 lot line. And so the property, as described in much more detail in the staff reports, lays out how it meets all the code requirements. Obviously, these are only 4 units, so we did not do a traffic impact analysis. It's not required for something this small. And the lot sizes exceed the minimum requirements for a 0 lot line, as it needs a minimum net lot size of 5,000. And that exceeds it, as you can see, where they are over 6,000 square feet. So I'm going to stop rambling at this point. In terms of the design of it, it is laid out in the staff report of how it meets the design. We obviously did do a public notice on this project, and as we did the public notice, we did receive 4 comments. As always, I am not going to read those comments, nor am I speaking as the speaker of those comments. Those comments were provided to the Planning Commission for review before the meeting. So you have had an opportunity to review those ahead of the meeting. So for this presentation purpose, I am just simply summarizing the talking points of it, but I'm not giving them the voice. They have had their own voice and their own opportunity. But each of the comments, generally speaking, were regarding the fact that Franklin Street already has significant traffic congestion. And so they feel that there's a safety hazard on Franklin Street, and adding any additional housing is going to cause an exacerbation of that. They feel that duplexes is not in character with the community, and that the development as a whole is too dense for the community, and that it'll be a reduction in property values. Duplexes are required in the same manner as single-family homes as is required per House Bill 2001. When we updated our code, we allowed for duplexes to occur as zero lot lines, a development, which is what is proposed tonight. And so it is an authorized use as a zero lot line. And so it is an acceptable proposal. And it is required per House Bill 2001 that we treat them exactly the same. So it per state law, it meets the character requirements. And adding 4 units to a street, it would equate to minimal in traffic impacts. And so, although we understand that there has been development to the south, this type of development is not going to increase it to any level in which we would be required to study it. So I'll leave it at that point, and I will conclude my staff report, and I'm available to answer any questions as well.
Okay. Any questions for Kelly?
Kelly, are there any plans for improvement on Franklin Street? This is Commissioner McLean.
I can hear you a little bit. Are there
So
any
what kind of
improvements?
improvements are planned for Franklin?
Franklin is fully improved currently. It already has a fully improved sidewalk. It already has the landscape planters. It's a fully improved full width street. So there aren't currently any required improvements along Franklin streets.
It's hard to tell from the pictures that we're looking at, to actually see those improvements. Thank you.
Do those improvements include sidewalks? I haven't been down Franklin in a while.
There's already a sidewalk along the frontage of this property.
Okay, thank you.
Kelly, just for clarity purpose, when determining the net square footage of the lot, only the access is deducted from the gross. The other 2 easements are not.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other questions? All right, with that then, we will open our public testimony portion of our hearing. Invite the applicant or the applicant's representative to come forward. State your name, please.
Good evening. My name is Laura LaRock with Udell Engineering. I'm the applicant's representative tonight. So as Kelly mentioned, you have a 2-part application before you for review. The first application is a partition. So the property is currently consists of 2 lots. What's being proposed is essentially a property line adjustment and then the land division to create 1 additional lot. Because of where an existing dwelling is, there is not an adequate width to get to just a standard single-family detached dwelling lot, unless a variance would have been requested to the rear setback of the existing dwelling. So in this case, the applicant decided to propose a 0 lot line housing. What that requires is a lesser width for the lot. So it's only 50 compared to 60 feet. What's proposed here is 2 lots, each with 56 feet in width. And then the area standard, it actually complies with what a detached single-family dwelling lot would be. The 2 new parcels would be flag lots. That means that the property would sit behind an existing single-family home and they would be accessed and have street frontage just off a narrow access driveway width. The driveway that's there now is currently shared between adjacent property owners and the subject property. That condition would continue to stay. The only thing that would change is that what is improved there now for in terms of driveway width would be increased a little bit wider so that people and traffic can have better functionality in that shared access way. There is a city-owned track and public right-of-way to the south of parcel 3. What's shown there is, to my understanding, not a fully improved public street. So access is proposed solely off of Franklin, just because the street conditions off this track or alley are not in a good condition to provide adequate access to the site. The site is currently fenced on most sides. Some of the fencing material changes as you work your way around, as different property owners had different ideas for what type of fencing worked best along property lines. But the entirety is fenced. And let's see what else I wanted to add. The lots that are being created, a zero lot line means that a single family home or duplex dwelling could be permitted on those. This particular one, the applicant is proposing to construct a duplex. The duplexes are proposed to be in the centrally located in the lot to provide as much setbacks from abutting properties as possible. The lot size, when you cover those with dwellings, the lot coverage area is very minimal on those lots. And also the proposed height is just going to be a one-story duplex. So it's not anticipated to actually see the roof area of the new structure when you're driving around Franklin Street. A good example and the possible housing type or floor plan that would go on this lot is one that is located directly from across Walker Street from the post office. So if you've ever exited the post office, and you look directly at a duplex, that's essentially the size of the structures that is proposed at this lot. So they're anticipated and designed to be kind of smaller in size, in height, and also setbacks. Putting them centrally in the lot reduces kind of the feel of it. So the further you are from the structure, the less kind of massing that you feel. So there's a lot of intentional designs on here to make them be more compatible with an infill development. Some of the comments that were received talked a little bit about size, just a general statement about them being too big. This particular one, they conform to all the setbacks and lot coverage, so they could essentially be larger by code, but they're well below some of the minimums there. If you were to look at platted subdivisions in the surrounding neighborhood to the east and to the west, they generally range from 5,500 to 6,500. Along the north and to the west, there are subdivisions with platted lots at about 7,000 square feet and about 5,000 square feet. So there's a big range. Most are in comparison to this size that's proposed with this application. So it's in range with what else is developed in terms of lot size. In terms of compatibility, that was also raised. It's kind of an older neighborhood, has a lot of older housing stocks in that neighborhood, has some newer subdivisions as well. And then it's also adjacent to a hazelnut facility. So it's kind of a mixed development pattern in that area. All in all, the proposal meets the development code criteria to create the lots. The housing type is why the application is before the Planning Commission for review. The purpose for the conditional use is just to make sure that any impacts from something that's not detached, single family, had a little bit more of a review process and input in terms of design. And the applicant feels that all those criteria are met. With that, I'll wrap up my presentation and open it up to questions.
Okay, any questions for Laura? I gotta say, this is a creative development. I've not seen one like this before.
Yeah, it's infill. Those large open properties are hard to find these days. So you're going to see a little bit more of this infill and middle housing that are starting to occur.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
With that then, if there's anybody with us this evening that would like to testify in favor of the application, go ahead and sign in if you haven't already. State your name.
I'm really hard to hear and I can't hear you. I'm sorry, bud.
So go ahead and sign in if you haven't already, and then state your name.
My name? Okay. My name is Todd Ader, and I live directly across from where this,
So just so that you're understanding, you're testifying in favor of the application?
no.
Okay, so hang on just a second. Is there anybody with us that wishes to testify in favor? That's okay. All right, seeing none, then those that would like to testify in opposition.
All right, so I live pretty much directly across from there where this would be developed, whatever. And to me, I drive truck for a living, and I've been down to Southern California a lot and seen a lot of the density down there. And this, to me, smacks of something that I would see down in California. Now, I've lived in this house since 1969. And it's an old, developed, we got a lot of elbow room around there, and I understand, and I'm not trying to tell somebody what to do with their property, okay? I'm all for capitalism, but it doesn't fit in the neighborhood. It's essentially, you're putting 4 units in a lot that's half the size of mine. It's an apartment complex, in my mind. And I understand you've got your laws about how things should be developed and if it's legal or if it's not. But I'm telling you, I've talked to everybody in the neighborhood and this don't fit. So anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Sir,
Thanks for listening.
what was your name again?
Todd, Oeder. I live at 560 Ralston.
Okay, before you go, is there any questions for Todd?
You better speak up.
Yeah, me too. So the only question I have is, do you feel that this application violates the code of the Lebanon City?
I don't have a clue if it violates the code or not. I'm a truck driver. I don't study any of those codes. Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
okay, all right.
I could
Thank-
start asking you about violations on a truck. Would you have a clue? I mean, here, seriously, dude,
Well, you get away with what you get away
Okay.
with.
I'm just saying. This was time for public comment. This is my comment.
Okay?
I think you just
Thank
wanted
you.
to confirm there was nothing glaring that we might have missed that you caught on to.
I don't, I couldn't possibly tell you. I didn't even graduate high school, so good luck, folks.
Thank you for sharing
Thank
with
you.
us.
Thank you.
Todd?
Take it with me? No, we can just leave it right here. Okay.
All right, anybody else wishing to testify in opposition of the application? Again, if you haven't already signed in, we would ask you to and state your name.
Hello, my name is Anna Lee. I wrote down my comments because I'm not a public speaker. And I know it sounds like I'm gonna go on for a long time, but I promise you I timed it. It's only like 5 minutes. It's not that long. I live directly across the street from the 1681 Franklin Street property. 4 years ago, when we started house hunting, my husband and I were specifically looking for an old house. Lebanon has a lot of great old houses. We found a house on 3rd Street across from the railroad tracks. It was a beautiful old house built in 1910. It was perfect. The location was perfect. The lot was large. It was just what we were looking for. We spent time walking around the house and studying the information sheet that our real estate agent had given us. After some time at the house, the listing real estate agent showed up and let us know that the information sheet about the house was wrong. They had just split up the lot, and the house now would sit on a lot size of just under 5,000 feet. When you drive by this house now, there are 3 two-story duplexes squeezed into the small lot that was partitioned. It looks awful. Zero lot line housing ruined the historical integrity and unique characteristics of this old house in Lebanon. So we moved on and we found our current house on Franklin Street. One of the things we loved about our location was the houses directly across the street from us. There are 5 houses in a row that were built 80 to 100 plus years ago. The next block down is mostly houses built 80 years ago. Um, Like our house, the 1681 house was built in 1915. These old houses give a distinct and characteristic look to our neighborhood. Sorry, I'm nervous.
Okay.
I've never spoken in front of any kind of board. I just want to take a minute of your time to talk about lot changes involving these historic houses in Lebanon. I have spent most of my life in Lebanon. My mom was born in the old library. I think Lebanon is a special town, and even more, Lebanon's historical locations, buildings, and houses are special. I'm sure all of you think that too. As residents of Lebanon, we should value and work to preserve these old houses and historic neighborhoods. I have recently read both Lebanon's Development Code and also Lebanon's Comprehensive Plan. Both of these talk about historical significance in developing. I'm going to read you just a few parts of these publications. So in the City of Lebanon Comprehensive Plan, in Chapter 1, on page 1, it says the purpose of land use planning is to identify appropriate and compatible land uses within a given area and to provide a means for effectively and efficiently facilitating and guiding development activity. Planning ensures that residential, commercial, and industrial uses are compatibly established in relation to existing uses and each other. One of the goals in the comprehensive plan is preserving those features that are special and unique to the community while also being responsive to changing needs and conditions. That's in Chapter 1 on page 7. It also says the city should maintain development standards that recognize and respect the character of established areas. That's in the comprehensive plan, Chapter 4, under land use. One of the goals in the comprehensive plan is preserving the historical and architectural integrity and established residential neighborhoods by requiring complementary design of infill development. That's in the comprehensive plan, housing goals, page 6. The comprehensive plan talks about supporting infill development and other development options on large or underutilized residential or commercial lots guided by clear and objective neighborhood compatibility standards. Also in the comprehensive plan, it talks about the historic resources inventory. During the 1980s, a comprehensive inventory was completed to document historic sites and structures within the city. This inventory includes a physical description, a statement of historical significance, and a history of numerous structures in Lebanon. In the intervening years, a number of structures and sites have become eligible for inclusion on the inventory. Accordingly, the inventory needs to be periodically updated. A major purpose of this inventory is to increase community awareness of historic sites and structures as well as their importance. That's in the comprehensive plan, page 6, under community-friendly development. I think it's talking about the list of historical properties listed on the City of Lebanon website. I believe that some of the old houses across the street from us, and maybe even my house, could be added to this inventory. On the City of Lebanon website, it talks about these houses contributing to the unique character of the community, and it says these properties are irreplaceable and merit preservation. Also in the comprehensive plan, it says the city should make older neighborhoods a top priority for historic inventory and preservation. Chapter 7, community-friendly development. So lastly, one of the statements of purpose in the development code is to protect residential, commercial, industrial, and civic areas from the intrusions of incompatible uses. I realize that you are all sympathetic to neighborhoods that experience unwanted development change. You can't stop capitalism, and I definitely don't want to. But there are neighborhoods like ours that zero lot line development is incompatible with due to historical characteristics. I believe the development code and the comprehensive plan can give you the freedom to reject zero lot line development in this location. Thank you for listening to my somewhat long comments.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Anna?
I do have a comment.
Go ahead.
I just want to commend you on your research and your well-written letter. We did receive this in advance of the meeting this evening, and I appreciate the time that you took to research this and to be knowledgeable about what you're bringing to us this evening. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you.
Annalee, we all live here in this community, and I mean, we all shop at Walmart. You know, I've probably seen you down there before. It breaks our heart to hear these stories,
I know.
but Lebanon's growing, and there's a lot of things happening that we can't do anything about. I live on Hyatt Street. Somebody put a mobile home real close to my house. I can look out my kitchen window and tell when their coffee pot comes on. That's how close they are. Now, Dawn does a really good job of explaining the laws that have been passed by the state legislature that guides us in the decisions that we make. Dawn, if you could just take a second. You're so good at this.
You're saying I'm a nerd.
No, we're
Well,
just saying
I
you're
think
really
you
good.
read more than the
He's
rest
saying he
of us.
doesn't want to do it.
So what Dave is referring to is the state has passed a couple of laws recently that basically takes a lot of the zoning control and development out of our hands. Because, and I'm sure you've read in the paper or heard on the news, the governor's declaration of a housing crisis. And as a result of that declaration, some of these new laws have come down, and most of them is focused on density. So where there used to be gardens and trees and that kind of thing, they're saying we need to put housing. So this application is a perfect example of what the governor is dictating, and not just the governor, but the state. We as a planning commission are duty bound to follow those guidelines. So if the application meets the criteria as Kelly outlined in introducing this, then we're duty bound to go forward with it. Our responsibility is to oversee the process to make sure that all the rules are followed and that it does in fact meet the criteria. We have almost no discretion or wiggle room when it comes to projects that are presented to us. Our responsibility is simply and primarily to make sure it's done right. So does that make sense?
It does. It does. I understand. I think when I read the Lebanon Development Code and the other one, comprehensive, my mind is blank, but it does seem to indicate a lot that Lebanon wants the community to be involved in the development. So I'm wondering how, if I asked, I know everybody in our neighborhood, like he said, is upset. If I asked, probably 90% of Lebanon residents would not want these zero lot housing to go in next to old houses, I'm sure. So how does a town like Lebanon, is there just nothing you can do? It just feels frustrating that it seems like from what I read in those two publications, we should have more control over that. And even the community should have more control over that.
And I don't disagree with you in essence. I guess the other way to look at it is the private property rights that every property owner has. So in this case, if this property owner says, the law allows me to do this, therefore I can. And I'm sure you could understand if it was your property and you wanted to do the same thing and your neighbor said, you can't do that. So we have to weigh it in that understanding.
Right. I guess I just wish there was more protection for especially these old houses that I think deserve protection from just crowding and ruining the integrity of what it originally, looked like and the beauty of it. I mean, Lebanon has such beautiful houses and it really does ruin it when you add duplexes right there.
I don't disagree with you, but like I said, we have very little discretion.
Right.
The code is set in Lebanon and reviewed every 8 years, correct? And so every 8 years, we have an opportunity to go back and look at the code and make some changes that might make it a little less desirable for these types of changes, but we're stuck with those for 8 years. So we are very limited. And while most all of us up here probably agree with everything that you said, we're duty bound as he's explained, so.
I do understand. I just wanted to share my comments and just, maybe, yeah, that's it.
Annalee, this research that you've done here
He's going to recruit you.
shows a lot of hard work on your part. You should consider applying for a position on the planning commission.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, and I just want to comment to both yourself and the gentleman that spoke earlier. You may not get what you want out of this meeting today, but it is absolutely vitally important that you continue to engage with your government. And whether it's here at the city level or whatever level else, the county, the state, federal, et cetera. Just because you might not feel like you made a difference today, the fact that you chose to participate is really important. There are not enough people participating, and then there are very few people that make the choice to participate well. And you participated very well, and you should be commended for that. And so thank you, seriously.
Don't be a stranger.
Okay.
Thank you, Anna. Is there anybody else wishing to testify in opposition of the application? Seeing no movement, then we will give the applicant the opportunity for rebuttal.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity to come back up. So I am a historic preservationist, and so I'm going to sidestep a little bit. There are mechanisms that, if the public is interested in exploring protecting individual properties or creating a district, protection in this sense is applying regulations to areas that have a collection of historic resources or something that's just unique in itself. So it's something that the public, if they're interested, could work with Kelly with the city and go through a process to apply those. As it relates to this application, I will point out that parcel 1 of the application contains existing dwelling. That dwelling was built right around the same time as some of these historic structures or older structures that are being mentioned. So the structure that's going to be retained on parcel 1, it dates back to 1950, just according to tax assessor records. So as accurate as that can be. Parcel 1 is nearly 10,000 square feet in a district that allows 6,000 square feet and has a frontage of 88 feet along the frontage. So by creating a flag lot in these areas, we're retaining a large lot parcel along the frontage of Franklin Street. So there's different design considerations that could have been applied here. There could have been demolition of structures. But on parcel 1, it does go to retain an older structure. Historic in terms of state law just means older than 50 years. So this one qualifies as being preserved on this lot. The setback from the lot that's being created is 20 feet, and it has a sizable setback from the front property line along Franklin Street. So that lot will retain the kind of look and feel of some of the other ones that border Franklin Street. The flag lots will be set to the rear. It'll be 113 feet at the minimum behind the existing structure. And again, there'll be setbacks and located in the center of the lot and a lower height to try to not draw the eye to the new structures, but to be kind of low scale, not high rise in a neighborhood where it's mostly 1 to 1.5 story dwellings. So we feel like what's proposed is compatible with the existing neighborhood. And it does meet some of the city's policies that were mentioned about historic preservation and retaining different aged housing in the community. I think that's the only kind of pieces I wanted to add. Does anybody else have any other questions or comments?
I have a question. So in the preservation of historic buildings, and I'm not familiar with the code in that area, but is it primarily just focused on the structure itself? Or is there also an aspect of the code to preserve the lot size and the surrounding feel of the property beyond just the structure itself?
Yeah. Historic preservation, kind of at all layers of government, is a big one to explain. I guess put simply, here in Lebanon, there's been a survey that's been performed. There are certain buildings, maybe under 20, that have been designated as a protected historic resources. When you say designated and protected, it means that only these buildings on a list have additional regulations applied to them. What the regulations say is that you essentially cannot alter the exterior of those buildings without going before the Planning Commission to have a review process. The intent is to preserve the historic material of the building. And if there's any sort of alterations or additions to those, that they file historic preservation guidelines that are set by the federal government to make sure that they're compatible. In terms of lot size and things like that, that is a local government decision. Historic resources in some of the other communities have higher setback standards from adjacent properties. Typically, they do have similar lot sizes, but new construction that's built within a district that's considered historic, new construction can go through a review process as well. In this part of town, and the property or the dwelling on the site is not a listed historic resource, meaning it's old. It has some character in terms of the architectural detail, but it's not a protected resource. And I'm not aware of the other listed resources in the community to know if there's others on Franklin Street. And this is not in a district or a boundary line that protects in a certain area bigger than a house.
So I think what I heard is if we had a historic house that actually was on the list, and this one's not, and the lot were large enough and it were zoned accordingly to allow it, you could allow a 7-Eleven or something else that's totally the opposite of what you would feel about this historic house right next to this this house. Is that true? There's nothing in the code to consider the overall aesthetic of the neighborhood.
I can say at the state level, there's basic protection for historic buildings. So if they're over a certain age, usually over 50 years, then there's a demolition delay process.
But that's on the building itself.
That's on a building.
Yeah, so
And then,
if it's not the actual building or the actual property, if it's next to it, even if it's something that gives off a completely different vibe, as long as it's allowed by code, it's allowed by code and they can do it.
so, to my knowledge, and I think Kelly is on the phone, so she can, or line, so she can speak specifically about the Lebanon code, but the state allows the local government to apply other regulations, such as siting and zoning. And I know in the city of Albany, they have a historic overlay district. So properties, even though they're not historic or within a district, there might be historic regulations that apply. So different cities handle it in different ways. The city of Lebanon, to my knowledge, does not have an overlay district.
Thank you.
Okay.
She's shaking her head.
Let's hear it, Kelly.
Go ahead, Kelly.
Kelly had to remind me by text. Sorry, Kelly had to remind me by text that it was outside the scope of the criteria for this hearing, but interesting. And I agreed, but that was right when it was wrapping up, so got to go on.
Okay, any other questions for Laura? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That will close our public testimony portion of the hearing. All further discussion will be amongst staff and planning commissioners. And what do you feel? What's your thoughts? I guess the obvious question is, do you feel that the criteria has been met through the application or by the application?
Yes.
Okay. See most heads nodding yes. Any further discussion? Is anybody prepared to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve. I move that the Planning Commission approve the proposed minor land partition and conditional use permit MLP 240. Wait, am I on the right one? Yes, 2401 and CUP 2401, adopting the written findings contained in the staff report with the development conditions, and direct staff to draft an order of decision incorporating the findings and conditions of approval.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been motioned and seconded. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, moving on to our second public hearing, and I will turn it back over to our city attorney.
You guys do have to give me credit for the fact that I've cut this thing way down, right? I actually read the statute and figured out that I could cut this down, about half the size it was. So just looking for a little props here. Tonight's hearing will be pursuant to the quasi-judicial procedure set out in 197.797. The applicable criteria for this hearing will be addressed in the staff report. Testimony may be in oral or written form, but must be directed towards the criteria outlined in the staff report, the comprehensive plan of the city's land use regulations. Any issue raised must be accompanied by statements and evidence sufficient enough to allow the commission and parties an opportunity to respond. Note the failure to raise an issue, including constitutional issues, by the close of the hearing will prevent any appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals. They ask for conflict of interest or bias. I'm not sure if that's what is this.
Is that?
Oh, we had somebody in charge here.
Oh, security?
It's only been an hour and a half since.
We're gonna close the doors.
Go fast. Okay, then let's open public hearing, planning file A-024-03, property located at 1021 West Airport Road. Ask the planning commissioner if there is any ex parte contact, conflict of interest, or bias. Okay, seeing none, then we'll turn it over to staff for staff report.
Okay. Good evening again. Before you tonight is a proposed annexation of 1021 West Airport Road. The property is on the north side of Airport and west of Strawberry Lane. The property is within the city's urban growth boundary, and it has a comprehensive plan designation of residential mixed density. Per the comprehensive plan, the only zoning designation identified for this that it could be upon annexation would be residential mixed density, and the applicant has identified acceptance of that preliminary zoning. The property is contiguous to city boundary on the south property line. And there are utilities within Airport Road that the property could connect to upon annexation. And so by accepting of the initial zoning, by it being contiguous to city boundary, and by it being able to connect to city utilities, it is subject to urbanization and meets all the criteria for annexation. And so staff recommends the planning commission recommend approval of the annexation to the city council. And that concludes my.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Kelly? Hearing none, then we will open the public testimony portion. Ask the applicant or applicant's representative to come forward. State your name, please.
So again, Laura LaRock with Udell Engineering, but I don't have anything to add to this application, but I am here for questions if somebody has any.
Any questions? Okay, thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak in favor of the application, please come forward. Anybody wishing to speak in opposition of the application, please come forward. Seeing no movement, then we will close the public testimony portion and discuss amongst staff and planning commissioners. Appears to be pretty straightforward. Any concerns? Okay, is anybody prepared to make a motion?
I'll make a motion again. I move that the Planning Commission recommend approval of annexation A-24-03 to the City Council based on the written findings in the staff report, and direct staff to draft and order a recommendation incorporating the findings and conditions of approval.
Second.
All right, it's been motioned and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, then, all of those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right. Moving on to our third public hearing, Planning File A-24-04, property annexation for property located at 2187 Mill Street. Again, any conflict of interest, bias, or ex parte contact? Okay, hearing none, then we will turn it over to staff.
Okay, before you tonight is a proposed annexation of the property on the northeast corner of Mill Street and Russell Drive. Property is within our urban growth boundary with a comprehensive plan designation of mixed use. It's contiguous to city boundaries along the south property line. And there are utilities within Russell Drive, and upon annexation, the property would be able to connect and extend utilities along Mill Street to be able to connect to city utility services. The only designation for zoning upon annexation would be mixed use, and the applicant has accepted the initial zoning. So by being contiguous to city boundary, by accepting the initial zoning, and by being able to connect to city utilities, it's subject to urbanization. The property meets the criteria for annexation. This application did receive one public comment by an individual that is in opposition to the annexation, identifying that the city needs to stop forcing people to annex properties. For clarification, this is not the city annexing the property. The county owns the property and is requesting the annexation. And so with that, I will conclude my report and answer any questions.
All right, any questions for Kelly? Again, the only one I have is for clarification. The annexation includes the southern section of Mill Street and to the center of Russell Drive, is that correct?
I don't have it in front of me, but if that's what the map shows, yes.
It does not. So the city already has jurisdiction of Mill Street. That happened quite some time ago. So this is strictly just the lot, and that portion of Russell Drive is actually within our
Okay,
boundaries.
because I saw it was colored in on the map as part of the annexation.
Yeah, I don't know if that's accurate or not, Don. We need to take a look at that, but my recollection is that this has all been annexed.
Okay.
We did a jurisdictional and annex transfer with the Lane
So
County.
the 0.2 acres is simply the lot.
That would be simply the law.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
And the rest of Mill Street is already annexed? Is that what you just said?
I'd have to look on I don't know if it is. I know we have jurisdiction of it.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's not even dedicated as right of way at this point. And what it is it's actually a parcel. So
okay. I misunderstood when you said you had jurisdictions. Anyway,
I think this is only the second time I've seen Lynn County annex property, so this must have been a cleanup project or something.
Happy to
Yes.
It was a
see it,
foreclosure.
honestly.
What was the question?
Okay.
It's just that I'm happy to see it,
Oh,
this property being annexed.
yes, I am too.
All right, with that then, we will open our public testimony portion and again, ask the applicant or the applicant's representative to come forward.
I'm Rachel Adamek, the Real Property Program Manager for Lynn County. I don't have anything to add to the application. I'm just here if you all have any questions.
Any questions?
No questions, but a comment. Thank you for doing this.
You're welcome.
I second that.
All right, thank you. Anybody wishing to speak in favor of the application, please come forward. Anybody wishing to speak in opposition of the application, please come forward. Seeing no movement, then we will close the public testimony portion. All discussion will be amongst staff and planning commissioners. All right, any concerns? Again, seems to be pretty straightforward. And thank you for the clarification on the boundaries. I was a little confused with that. All right, again, anybody ready to make a motion?
Tina's the only one that hasn't made a motion tonight.
Well, I was going to make a motion. I will make the motion. I move that the Planning Commission recommend approval of annexation A-24-04 to the City Council based on the written findings in the staff report and direct staff to draft an order of recommendation incorporating the findings and conditions of approval.
A second.
And a second. All right, it's been motioned and seconded. Any further discussion? All right, all those then in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 And opposed. Motion carries unanimously. Finally, moving on to our final public hearing, Planning File A-24-05 for the property located at 140 Russell Drive. Again, any ex parte contact, conflict of interest, or bias? Seeing none, then we'll turn it over to staff for staff report.
Thank you again. Before you is a proposal to annex 140 Russell Drive. It's on the south side of Russell, east of Primrose Street. It's again located within the city's urban growth boundary with a comprehensive plan designation of residential mixed density. Only designation for zoning upon annexation within the comprehensive plan would be residential mixed density, and the applicant is accepting the initial zoning. The property is contiguous to city boundaries on the north and east side, and there are utilities available for connection in Russell Drive. And so since it's contiguous to city boundaries, they are accepting of the initial zoning, and they are able to connect to utilities. The site is eligible for urbanization, and it meets the criteria for annexation. So staff recommends the Planning Commission recommend the annexation to the City Council. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Any questions for Kelly? Or Ron either, for that matter? All right, hearing none, then we would open the public testimony portion and invite the applicant or applicant's representative.
Laura LaRock with UDEL, applicant representative, and again, just here for questions.
Any questions? All right, thank you, Laura. Anybody wishing to testify in favor of the application, please come forward. Anybody wishing to testify in opposition of the application, please come forward. Seeing no movement, then we will close the public testimony portion of our hearing and discuss between staff and planning commissioners. Again, any concerns? All right. Then is anybody prepared to make a motion?
I will. I move that the Planning Commission recommend approval of annexation, excuse me, A-24-05 to the City Council based on the written findings and the staff report, and direct staff to draft an order of recommendation incorporating the findings and conditions of approval.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been motioned and seconded. Any further discussion? All right, all those then in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. All right, thank you. All right, next agenda item is citizens' comments. Obviously, we've been through the agenda. If there's anything that was not on the agenda that you'd like to address the Planning Commission, this would be the time to do so. Come forward, state your name, and if you haven't already signed in, please do so.
Good evening. My name's Jason Fair. I've been a resident of Lebanon for 51 years now. I don't know if this is the right place to come for my concerns, but I figured I'd start somewhere. I'll do this in a minute. My concern is with the roads and the traffic situation in town now. I've got 2 teenage drivers, and I've noticed that with all the apartment buildings and complexes that are going in, we haven't really upgraded our infrastructure for our roads. And I don't know if this is the group I need to talk to about that. I've noticed a lot of road rage in town, and especially during the morning hours and in the evening hours when people are getting off of work. I've noticed a lot of situations where people are getting impatient because they're not able to get out of the parking lots, or they're trying to even get around in the school zones. And we've had multiple kids get hit on the intersection of 5th and Airport. And I think that a traffic signal would take care of a lot of problems right there, maybe a few more in town. Another issue is this is considered kind of a commuter town. And with all the colleges going in also, there's huge inrush of new people coming in, and the roads are not being able to keep up with it.
Would you like to address that, Ron?
Sure. So some of the things that we look at when we're looking at traffic, we do traffic impact analysis. So
I heard that on that first hearing.
So if a development comes in, and that's primarily to see whether there's any offsite mitigation efforts that need to be done. Some of the things that the city's doing, we actively try and maintain our streets, but we have very little street funding. We're going to have a new signal that's going to go in at Airport and Stoltz.
Okay, that'd be a good one.
That just opened up for bids, and that will be recommended to be awarded at the next city council meeting. We look for areas to improve as we improve, as growth happens. But the reality is there's very little funding for road maintenance. We have some money for road expansion, but that expansion, it just depends on the area and when it's happening. I agree, the traffic is, as the town grows, the traffic is heavy. But if you look at our levels of service still are within what is recommended by our transportation system plan. May not feel like it to you, right? But it does meet that criteria.
So is there a rubrics to state like what the criteria for that would be?
Now say that to me again.
Is there a rubric for the criteria for being, so is it based on population? If our population gets to a certain point, then is that when roads are going to be required to be updated or up?
So we have master plans that master plan these improvements out. So as development occurs and you get more people, the commuter population is really hard to deal with, right? So we're trying to deal with the residents here, and as development occurs, we will increase road size, we will put in traffic signals, but they have to warrant it, right? So there's an analysis that's done for, say, putting in a traffic signal. Does it warrant it, and is it required by a developer? Is it required, if people paid into a fund, which we have, which is called system development charges? And is there a threshold which then meets, or that gets met, so that then we are putting in the signal? And so another prime example for being prepared for, future growth, the city purchased the house at the corner of Airport and 12th, the one that got tore down. We tore that down. We took a little bit of heat for that, but that's future planning, so that when and if, and most likely, that intersection and all of that 12th Street builds out down there and it's warranted for a signal, we're ready to go with that. So we are constantly looking at it, but there's a lot of growing pains that happen in that time frame, and there's only so much that we can tack onto a developer.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough.
Okay.
Ron, is there ever a possibility of a bypass ever put in around Lebanon?
I was just gonna bug him.
Yeah,
on
bypass
that.
from
We need to build
like
one,
Sweet
no.
Home to Highway 34 or
I mean,
something.
we are adding a lot of people and a lot of buildings, but we're not adding new streets. We might be improving streets and adding stoplights and stuff, but we're not adding any roads or streets. And so is there any possibility of something like that in the future, in the next 20, 30 years, or?
So yeah, absolutely, there's a possibility. It got taken out of the last transportation system plan. So so if you look at where Lebanon Parkway is, where, drawing a blank, LBCC, the diesel mechanic school is out there.
Yeah.
So the road that goes down through there, that was kind of set back in 2000 and, I don't know, I can't even remember the dates. They all run together, but that was going to be the bypass. And then you would go to the north and it would tie into Reeves Parkway and so on, and that would be the bypass. But what they found was funding that is never going to happen. I mean, at least without some kind of change in roadway money being offered. So now we're looking at, so Airport and 12th is primary. I mean, that's one of the primary reasons we bought that, to try and peel some of that traffic off Airport Road. You send it down south, you build out Stoltz, Vaughn, and you get them out to Crowfoot. And eventually, at some point, Crowfoot and the highway out there where Wyrick tie together will have a signalized intersection. But that stuff all takes, I mean, it's so gradual that as you're growing, you don't really, you'd like to see it right now, but it's just as development occurs and you start hitting these thresholds, that's when that happens.
So does that take a lot of litigation eventually to do all that?
In litigation? No, I mean, you've got to buy all the property, right? So you could run into condemnation issues. You've got to have the ability to fund a project of that side. A project of that magnitude would be 100 million, maybe. I mean, you're talking a lot of money. So the right of way along Crowfoot down there, between 5th Street and South Main, that was a 100-foot right of way that was dedicated when, what's the name of the subdivision down there? Why am I drawing a blank on that? Joy, Jaden. Anyway, there's a 100-foot right of way down through there that was dedicated when the original TSP was established. And then the new TSP in 2018 changed that. So that doesn't mean that we can't go back on our next TSP update and say, hey, we want to put this bypass back in there, or look at alternatives to get around town. But
You thinking Kingdom Estates?
no, Heather Estates.
No, close enough.
Yeah.
So to put something like that into motion and to get it to turnkey would take 20 years?
Oh, yeah, at least. And the reality of it is, I mean, you might get a grant here or there to build segments of it, but most of it's going to be driven by development, right? As development occurs in those areas down south where you don't have, current buildings, and you get a subdivision that's put in there, why then it's required as a condition, as part of that subdivision, that you have to dedicate so much right of way and build so much frontage of the roadway. But until that point, we don't have the mechanism to pay for it. getting any kind of roadway grant to pay for a bypass is pretty tough.
Ron, what you're describing to me doesn't sound so much like a bypass because it still plows right through Lebanon. What would we, or is it within the realm of possibility to get something that actually bypasses the city of Lebanon, takes traffic from 34 to 20 and hits 20 some place down there by Waterloo or whatever, south of town? Because there's a lot of destination traffic headed towards Sweet Home and beyond
Yeah,
that doesn't want to go through Lebanon.
Yeah, so that's where the Wyrick and Crowfoot, that was designed to not, it's outside our UGB. So it would, I mean, for the most part.
Okay.
So you would be right outside the UGB. Anything other than that, you're talking Lynn County, state, global. I mean, you talk one that you're going clear down to Waterloo. Yeah, I don't even know. I would hate to even venture a guess at the cost of something like that. And when you start buying property, when you start building the roadway, bridges,
Who does that? Is that state or is that county or a combination?
what's that?
Who would be involved in something like that? Would that be
It'd be
initiated
regional.
by the state or
It'd be
initiated by
regional.
the county?
Yeah, it would be initiated probably in a TSP effort at a state level, I would guess. You know, so the state and the county would say, hey, we need to do this. Lebanon would be involved in it. But for us to work outside our UGB like that that'd be pretty tough.
God forbid Lebanon should ever become like Dundee.
Yeah, I hear your traffic and we see the traffic. We kind of go by the same things. We don't get to make random decisions. It's all based on criteria that's laid out and that's how we make the decisions.
So do I get this right saying that if we were to do that, it would cost developers more money because they would have to front the bill for that? Is that right? Is that what you were saying?
As that, well, they're required to do that on any street, right? So,
Okay, right.
but yes.
Okay,
yes.
so is there a document or something that states the criteria for roads to population, for instance?
It's all based on trip generation. So it's all based on how many vehicles the development creates. And we have a fairly extensive TSP that lays out where our major road network. It doesn't do local networks, but it does do the major networks. So if a developer comes in and he wants to build on, let's, what's a good one? How about Airway south of Airport Road?
Okay.
So we've got a TSP that says you shall have this width of street, so on and so on. So he's required to build that street, the length of his frontage, and make a connection if he doesn't have a connection, make that connection, and he's got to do a half to three-quarter street improvement in order to make that development viable. So that would get conditioned on them. We wouldn't fit the bill. In some places, we would fit the bill if it's a system development charge, and I'm getting really deep here, but we have what's called system development charges for transportation as well, which allows us, like if some development's only gonna make an impact of a quarter of a signal or something like that, it goes into a fund so that when it's time, then we can do it, or when it's triggered by, traffic volumes.
Okay.
I'm confusing the heck out of you, I'm sure. And if you
No.
want to go deeper than that, come see me in my office for sure.
No, so, is this the right group to bring this sort of
This is
concern
a
to?
perfect spot for this.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Yeah. Your participation in what you're doing right now encourages thought and talk and this is how things get started.
Okay, good.
But I have a question of Ron. Is it beyond the city's purview to, let's say, set up a future development fund that developers have to pay into every time they develop that will go towards a project like that 20 years down the road? For example, if you want to build a 3-story, 50-unit apartment, you have to pay so much per door that would go into a special fund that would be there for the development of a special project like a bypass.
I'm gonna say off the cuff, no, we couldn't do that. I don't think it'd be legal, but I would caveat that I'm not 100% sure. I don't know how, Trey, I don't think we could do that.
Well, any exaction like that, you'd have to be able to tie a nexus between it and so the requirement of that would have to have a nexus to the property development itself. And there's a whole test on how to get there, which Kelly's probably more familiar with than I am. But, yeah, I mean, they're looked at with what's called strict scrutiny by the courts, so.
So can we do this before you retire?
Oh, yeah, because I'm the last level of legal interpretation you're going to get on something like that.
Yeah, it would be tough, but that's what your system development charges are doing essentially right now.
Yeah.
If we had, if we had a bypass that was part of our transportation system plan or any major road, and we said that's a priority project out of our system development charges, then when we run a model and methodology for transportation system charges, then that gets factored into it. So maybe instead of $5,000 for let's just use $5,000 for a single family home on transportation, then maybe that becomes 7, and vice versa as you go on up, right? So that's how you pay for those improvements as they come in.
See, and here's the basis for my thought on this is that if these developers come in and they're building these apartments and all these houses and stuff, they're contributing to the future traffic problems of Lebanon. Absolutely. I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, that's common sense. So wouldn't it be fair that they contribute the funds to help alleviate that later on?
Well, and
instead of just brushing it off on the residents?
No, I think they are. I think that's what you're seeing when you pay system development charges, right? It's all based on what projects are in your transportation system plan. So that's your methodology is built off that. So that's where your charge base is going.
But those funds in that system development charges, they're spent by the city basically as an ongoing.
Oh, no.
For
No,
ongoing projects.
Those are 100% related to a project that is coming out of the TSP, and that we've said, hey, this is going to be a priority project, and it then becomes a system development charge project. So it's coming out of your TSP where that's coming. So whether it's big, little, or small, and that's how that, but it has to be specifically spent on public improvement, that transportation system plan.
Like a roundabout or something like that you were talking about?
Yes, we've got multiple locations in the TSP that call for roundabouts, right? So I don't know. I can't even tell you how many projects.
Trying to open up. This is practical. Could you just refresh my memory, that stoplight that's being put in, like what's the budget for that? Like approximately how much does it cost the city to put in a stoplight like that? Because I'm not sure. No, the one that you're putting, yes.
Stolzen Airport.
Yeah, that one.
But that's a multiple.
Or just to put in a stoplight, like a ballpark of approximately, because I'm not sure that we generally understand the.
I can't give you that off the top of my head. I can tell you that the bid price for the project was almost $2.1 million.
Okay.
That's not all signal, because there's a lot more going on there on that project. I did not specifically look at the bids as they came in. I read them, and I've got other staff that are putting the bid tabs together. I can get you that information on what it costs, but it's going to be $500,000 to $600,000.
I just think sometimes it helps to refresh our memories, like how much those projects or that type of thing, because there has been lots of chatter and talk in the past about that specific stoplight. And I remember at the time being like blown away by how much those kinds of things cost. So being able to budget those, like it's budget for those kinds of things, obviously it takes a lot of time to plan those things and have them come about.
Yeah,
and
this one would have been put in
cost.
2 years ago, but we ran into right-of-way issues. So
Right.
Unfortunately, sometimes you got to work those issues before you can actually move forward. But yeah, it's
They're muddy waters.
Okay, did we address your concern?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay,
and if
appreciate you
have
bringing
more
that.
questions, please come see me.
Okay.
Anytime, just call me, come see me. We can walk through that. I'll show you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
You
Absolutely.
can
Hey,
apply to
thank
come
you.
join us. I mean, you'll find out lots of information.
All right, moving on then to commission business and comments. You probably figured out by now that this is Dave's last meeting. So, I mean, by his choice, I'm not kicking him off the
Not
planning
being
commission.
fired.
So, Dave, you've been with us, what, about 10 years?
Yeah.
I remember I was a wee boy when you,
You had more hair.
so, David McLean, upon your admission of your desire to step down from the planning commission by the power not vested in me, I sentence you to receive this plaque, as a token of our appreciation. And not just our appreciation, but the entire city for your service.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will miss you.
Most definitely.
My, my sense of humor.
All right. Any other commission business comments? Shirley, did you want to say anything about the town hall meetings you mentioned? Or was that?
Oh, I was just talking to you, but I attended the, the town hall last week on Thursday, and I just thought it was a great meeting and lots of really good questions. But I had called Dawn because I had mentioned that it might be a good idea to maybe have somebody from the planning commission at those town halls, because there were some questions that that were answered very well, but I just thought it would be nice. So I asked Don if maybe he wanted to go to the last night's meeting, just
And I
in
did.
case. Good, yeah.
And kudos to you, Ron, and to Ken, and to the commissioners who were there. I thought, or counselors, I mean. I thought they did a great job of addressing the concerns and addressing the staff or the questions that came up. So, well done.
That goes to the council. The council was very adamant that they go before the public and get that message out and hear from them. So that's on them. So.
And I didn't mean to leave Trey out. He was there too.
We
and
tried.
participated.
Kelly was there, yeah. No, it was a very good meeting, and I'm proud of our council for going before the public and giving them this opportunity to ask questions and state their concerns, and everybody had really good information to share, and
Yeah.
I think there's an understanding that we all live here and work here and may not be excited about some of the choices we have to make, but.
I was at the Thursday meeting as well, and it was very refreshing that the city council and the city staff put on that meeting, and the transparency was, you know, it's great.
Agreed.
Good.
All right. Anything else before the planning commission?
I can say really quick, thanks for putting up with me being on Zoom. Sorry, I'm not there. I hate doing it this way, but I am in Bend for the League of Oregon Cities conference for the next couple of days. So I'll try to bring back some good information for you all. Based off of some of the comments and conversations, we had a planning commission training, probably a year and a half ago, on some of the conversations of the legal aspects of nexus and ref proportionality and stuff. And there's a new case that came out from the Supreme Court that added to that. And so I think we can maybe dust off that planning commission training and bring that back and have some good, robust conversation about that. So I can plan on putting some additional training together for you guys and have that conversation if y'all would like.
You made that sound so exciting. How can we resist?
Hey, I love these types of conversations. It is amazing. This is my planner nerd talk coming out. So, and then I know that there was questions about the historical preservation stuff too. So we could probably pull some of those conversations together as well. So I'd be happy to put that together as well.
Do we have applications next month?
Not currently, but it's still young enough in the month where we might be able to. So I'll keep you posted.
And we have a joint meeting. Don't we have a joint meeting next month?
We do. We have a joint meeting next month with the city council on November 13th at 4:30.
30, okay.
4:30 to 5:30.
November 13th, you said?
So I hope I have that date right.
Is it the 7th? It's the 17th, isn't it?
Hang on.
Can we just confirm that?
I'm looking at it right now. It's November 13th, November 13th at 4:30.
Oh, I even have it on my calendar. Look at me.
Hey, I'm so proud.
All right, anything else? Tina, did you have something?
Nope, that was it. I was just asking about the
Okay.
joint meeting.
All right, with that then, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all.
Good night, Kelly.
Night.
Thank you, everybody. It's been a pleasure serving with you.
Aw, do you really miss?
Thank you, Dave.